What's up, y'all? Today I'm going to be ranking all of the Scream characters from Scream 1 through 6. You guys know I just recently watched the entire franchise, and now I think it's a really good time to give you my general thoughts and where I would rank each character from the Scream franchise. Let's go ahead and start with CeCe. I think that she is a great way to start off the franchise. I didn't expect her to die so early on, even though, apparently this is one of the most famous kills in horror history. I think that she sets the bar really high in the Scream movies when you're first starting out. I would easily put her at the A tier. She has a few questionable moments for me, as you guys know. I don't think she should have kept picking up the phone, but after I realized that the killers were there was nothing that she could do about it. She did the best with what she could. She answered the horror questions under the anxiety of a killer about to attack her. She's an A tier character, but her boyfriend Steve, we don't really get much from him. He's really just like the opening kill of the franchise to set the tone. I would maybe put him in the D tier, but we do see the reaction from CeCe, and because of him, we really get a nice kickoff to the Scream franchise. So I don't feel right putting him in the F tier, but I think D tier is really good for Steve. So next we're going with Sidney Prescott. As you guys know, I think she's one of the best final girls, if not the best final girl in any horror franchise. She's got Chun-Li kicks from death. You can't even handle more than 10% of her power. Half the time she's just toying with these Ghostface killers to the point where she is beyond S tier. She's really a triple S tier, but for the sake of the tier list, she's going on the S tier. She is probably the best character in all of the Scream franchise. Next up, I'm going Gail Weathers. Now, Gail always starts off the movies, every single one of them, on the wrong foot. And then throughout the movies, she does a lot of amazing things. She does have the willpower to get shit done. She helps a lot with the investigations. I really love Gail, and she's a good personality throughout the trio and the rest of the franchise. But I'm not giving her the S tier. I'm going to give Gail the A tier. While I do love her character, she gets on my nerves sometimes, and just because of that, she edges down to the A tier, especially in Scream 6. She said that she wouldn't write anything after Dewey's death, and she did it anyway. Really took it down a peg for me. But speaking of Dewey, next on the list, Dewey Riley. You guys know I love my guy, but my soft spot for Dewey does not mean that I'm ignorant to how kind of useless he is throughout the franchise. He's really just a knife sponge. He kind of fucks a lot of things up. I mean, he's got a heart of gold, and he's willing to do anything for his friends and for Gail. The guy just struggles half the time. I love him more than anything. So from a heart standpoint, he's an S tier character. But as a Scream character, he's probably going to have to go on the A tier. He's really awesome, but he doesn't quite edge into the S tier because there's multiple times that he kind of fumbles the bag. The only time that he really came in clutch was when he unloaded a full clip into Roman and finally got the headshot on him. But other than that, Dewey was really just kind of there. I know that's probably surprising for you guys that watch the reactions. You know I love Dewey, but I'm going to try to be as fair as I can in this tier list. Alright, so next is Principal Hembry. The Fonz made his way into the Scream franchise. Principal Hembry's probably sitting at like a C tier. He's really just kind of there. He's just an extra kill. I feel good putting him on the C tier, even though his kill is probably one of my least favorites of the entire franchise. Now, my guy Randy Meeks. Here's the thing about Randy. He dies so early in the franchise, and because he dies so early, his ranking isn't going to be quite as high because he really only has like a movie and a half to really stand out, and a little bit in 3, and the ripple effect of his niece and nephew in the new Scream movies, that is a nice touch. I love his rules to surviving horror movies and how that's, used in Scream 1 through 3, but because he dies so early, I'm gonna have to put him in the B tier, unfortunately. Don't kill me, don't put me at the stake. I would maybe push him up to A tier, but you would really have to make a strong argument on why Randy deserves to be pushed up, because he really didn't survive very long in the franchise. Next on the list, Tatum. Now, I think Tatum was a great character. I thought she was going to survive a little longer. I should have known she was going to die. Out of the first movie, she's probably one of the more creative kills. You know, she's killed by the garage door. I love her kill, and I love how she stands up to Ghostface and kind of fights him, throws alcohol at him, hits him with the door fridge. So she has a lot of final girl energy, but she kind of fumbles in the end. She gets stuck, which she really shouldn't have gotten stuck, and she dies. So because she's only in the first movie, and they don't even really talk about her in the rest of the movies. She's Dewey's sister, and they barely talk about her throughout the rest of the franchise. So I'm probably going to have to throw her on the B tier. She's a B tier. She's right there with Randy. If she would have stayed alive throughout the entire franchise, her and Sidney would have been a very dynamic duo. I don't think Ghostface would have even gotten close to them. Tatum dying was actually what sends Dewey into his like invincible body that becomes a knife sponge. And after he retires from being a sheriff, is when he's vulnerable again, and I think that's because Tatum. Alright, that's my random weird theory. Alright, so next on the list is cameraman Kenny. While I do feel bad for Kenny because he takes shit from Gail in the entire first movie, he has a very heroic heart. When Sidney comes up to the van, he actually tries to help Sidney. He just falls victim to a Ghostface kill. While he is heroic, I don't think that Kenny really held on very long for the franchise. I think he's very easily forgotten about throughout the sequels. Because of that, he's going to go down on the C tier for me. If we were just talking Scream 1 characters, though, he's pretty high. But for the overall franchise, I think Kenny kind of gets forgotten about. So finally, we're getting to the killers of Scream 1, starting with Stu. I think Stu is easily an A-tier character. You know, he's wild and zany. That wild, chaotic energy is why I love him so much. But he also has a few weird moments where he talks about, like, his parents are going to be mad at him. And while that's a funny-ass line, there's something about his, like, chaotic commitment to being a Ghostface killer, even though he really has no reason to, other than it sounded like it was fun. I think Billy kind of overshadows him a little bit, so I'm going to put Stu in the A tier. If Stu happens to come back in the future and changes things up a little bit, we might have to revisit Stu on the list, but right now, just based off Scream 1, I think he's A tier. But going to Billy, that's definitely an S tier character. Billy is probably one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character in the entire franchise. I'm so happy they bring Billy back as Sam's father in Scream 5 and Scream 6 because, you know, it was a great way to bring Billy back in that legacy sequel-esque type deal, you know, being super meta with it. But Billy was the one that pretty much started it all, even though Roman kind of started it all. Billy's the first Ghostface killer that actually goes on a murder spree, kind of popularizes the character in this world and gets the Stab franchise going. So without Billy and his motivation to kind of get revenge on Sidney and the family, you don't really have any of this. So Billy just, you know, starting it all in the first movie, he automatically gets the S tier. But also just his commitment to be a piece of shit, have sex with Sidney, kill Sidney, like, just be a lying bastard. And the fact that Sam exists means that he was definitely cheating on Sidney as well. So just as a villain, as a character, S tier for sure. Billy's that guy. But as an actual person, piece of shit. Horrible. So now getting into Scream 2, we're going to be ranking Phil and Maureen. I think Jada's death at the beginning of Scream 2 does rival Casey in the beginning of Scream 1. The thing about hers is that it does feel a little more zany because you have all the people in the theater going crazy watching Stab. It's almost like campy how she just walks up on the stage and screams in front of the screen. Like, I don't know. I do think that she has some great lines. She's a great way to start off the sequel. Her death is really, really high up there for the opening kills. I would probably put Jade at the B tier, and I would be willing to put Phil on the C, almost D tier. Almost D tier. Him getting stabbed through the bathroom stall, it's one of my least favorite kills in the franchise. It low-key, I was really nervous for Scream 2 when I saw that. I'm actually going to push Phil down to the D tier, unfortunately. He's a cool dude, awesome jacket, but Maureen, she was really good. I love Jada's character. I would definitely put her in the B tier. I wish there was more from her character, but she's really good as an opening kill. So next on the list is Cotton, a very interesting character for murder charges for Maureen Prescott, but actually, you know, he's innocent. So I like his dynamic with Sidney and kind of how Gail pits them between each other. You know, another reason why Gail She really gets under my skin sometimes. Cotton also doesn't last very long in the franchise. You know, he's really strong in Scream 2 and actually saves Sidney. But then in Scream 3, he's the opening kill. So we don't really get that much time. He does have a show called 100% Cotton, which is like the best fucking name of all time. I love that so much. He doesn't really shine very brightly in the Scream franchise for me. Like, even at the end of Scream 2, I'm more thinking about Miss Loomis and Mickey more than I'm thinking about Cotton. I would probably put Cotton on the C tier. So after our late departed Kenny, he is replaced by Joel as the new cameraman for Gail. He is very concerned about dying in the Scream franchise, which he should be. He is definitely on the chopping block, so I love that he pretty much just exits Scream 2 at one point in the movie, just gets in a taxi and fucking leaves, and he doesn't come back till the very end of the movie. So he does survive, so that's pretty cool, but other than him surviving, he doesn't really do that much. He has a few funny lines. I'm probably going to drop Joel down to the D tier. A few funny lines are saving him from the F tier, though, is what I'll say. And that leads me to CeCe, one of our newer characters in Scream 2, who is pretty much just introduced to be one of the kills for Ghostface. One of the better kills in Scream 2, I would say, but kind of forgettable in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, I do like her character. She kind of has some sass with the phone calls. Also, a little questionable with the sorority house. You know, it seemed like nobody was there. I feel like CeCe would have been a little bit smarter. You know, she did put up a good fight against Ghostface, but CeCe is probably just going to be in the C tier to make it a triple C effect. Now, Officer Andrews and Officer Richards really don't do anything. They're kind of like Sidney's bodyguards once we understand that the Ghostface killer is back, and they're kind of there to protect Sidney. I mean, they do get some pretty decent deaths. Like Officer Andrews gets a throat cut, and Officer Richards gets the poles through the head on the hood of the car. That's probably one of my favorite kills of the entire franchise. So I'm gonna put Officer Richards in the D tier, but I'm gonna put Officer Andrews in the F tier. Thought he was lame. And really the only reason that Richards is getting pushed up is because he has a cool death. I love when he's like flinching and kind of still holding the gun. Like, it's just such a brutal kill. Now, Hallie McDaniel is the roommate of Sidney when she's in college. Apparently, she was supposed to be one of the Ghostface killers, but with the script rewrites, she just ends up being one of the victims of Ghostface instead. She is part of one of the best scenes in the franchise when they're going across the unconscious Ghostface in the car. A lot of tension goes on in that, and I really thought that she was going to die in that scene. And then, you know, you get the kind of the small fake out, a lot of tension build up, and then she gets a really decent death. Other than that death scene, she really has nothing to do in the movie. I do wish there was a little more from her, but because we only get a cool death scene, I'm at least going to put her on the D tier. Now, my Derek one's going to be a little controversial, okay? Because I actually really like Derek. I misjudged my guy. If you guys watch the Scream 2 reaction, you know how much that hurt me, that I just pretty much shit on him the entire movie, and he was actually a good guy. I would put him probably in the A tier. But Derek does something very unforgivable that I cannot look past. He starts singing in public. He takes his dirty ass shoes and walks on top of tables where people eat. He makes Mickey do some fucking weird ass dance that I can never unsee. In my nightmares, I see him doing that little like arm push, whatever it is. And then it's just, it's the worst part of the Scream franchise for me. The highest I can put Derek is the C tier after his random outbursts. But that's being generous. Now, to get to the killers of Scream 2, I do love the Mickey reveal. But prior to the reveal, Mickey is barely in the movie. So I have no reason to think that he's going to be the killer. There's not really that much evidence other than he kind of pushes on Randy in film class. I do like that he's kind of a psycho and that he's really like into the killer role. I would probably throw Mickey on the C tier as well. He's one of the more enthusiastic Ghostface, I'll say. Out of all the Ghostface, he's probably a little more forgettable, especially because he has Miss Loomis, which I would put as an A tier character. Even though she's barely in the movie, her motives are so good. I love how psychotic she looks. Her eyes are so big. She's, you know, I believe that she's going after Sidney. It makes sense that she would be attacking Sidney. And it all comes from Sidney's mom. Like, that was such a good reveal. It's probably one of the best reveals in the franchise. And I love that she tricks Mickey into working with her and then just kills him anyway. Or, you know, she thinks she kills him after all those gunshots. Her strategy was one of my favorites, so she's going pretty high on my list at the A tier. Now, jumping into Scream 3, we have Officer Kincaid. Now, I really had some trust issues with him because he had that really like cold demeanor, but after realizing that he's just a good ass detective, didn't trust anybody, and got shit done, and he ends up marrying Sidney and having kids with her, we know he's a good guy. I think even though he's only in Scream 3, he sets a pretty good like presence about himself, and the fact that he does end up with Sidney later and is talked about and has the potential to come back in a future Scream movie. I'm going to put him at the B tier. Even though there's not that much of his partner, Detective Wallace, though, he has one of the best lines in the entire franchise where he's talking about Cotton getting stabbed, and they're like, you don't really think the film production is going to be like part of the reason for this, right?
He was making a movie called Stab. He was stabbed.
It's one of the best lines. I laughed so hard in the reaction. That line holds him pretty high, but he really doesn't do anything else other than that line. I'm going to put him in the D tier. That's the only thing saving him from the F tier is that one good line, though. We do have Christine, the girlfriend of Cotton, at the beginning of the movie. She is also part of the opening kill with Cotton. Other than her death and introducing us to the voice changer with the Ghostface killer, which I thought was a cool addition if they explained it a little better. She was very cautious around Cotton, which makes sense with the voice changer. So setting the tone for Scream 3, she's a D tier character. But going to Sarah Darling, she was just kind of like a meta character that they knew they were just going to kill her off very quickly. It was kind of so-so. Her scene was okay. Like, she gets thrown through some glass and then stabbed. Sarah's an F tier character for me. Very much throwaway character. Didn't care about her death at all. But there was only one man that could rival Dewey's strong testosterone-filled presence, and that was Steven Stone. Thought he was hilarious next to Dewey, calling my man Dewey Dewdrop. You can't really be stepping to Dewey like that in this franchise, but Steven Stone, no fucks were given. I like his dynamic where he's considered this like amazing security guard. He talks shit on Dewey and how the list of people he's protected reads like an obituary, and he puts up a pretty good fight against Ghostface when he does eventually get killed. For the spunk that he had against my man Dewey, he's going C tier. If Steven would have lasted a little bit longer though, he could have definitely ended up in the B tier. Alright, next is Tom Prince. Dude is definitely on the F tier. He goes back into the house to read more script pages, lights the fucking lighter, and blows the entire house up. There's not much more to say about him other than he's an idiot. F tier for sure. Hilarious death. Angelina should have been one of the killers. There's so many times in the movie when Sidney kicks in the stall and sees Angelina and she's kind of like holding all the Ghostface stuff and she's like, oh, I can like take the props home and stuff, right? Sidney should have kicked her right then and there, got her out of there, used 100% power, would have wiped her from existence as if she just vaporized. She's just kind of an annoying character. She has the one good line about how she didn't want to have sex with Milton for the part and then die. She's a D tier. She's a D tier. But she does get a good, like, suspicious vibe about her in the movie, so it did throw me off in Scream 3. Now, Tyson, he puts up a good fight against the Ghostface killer. He's actually got a funny gag with the scissors. You know, I do like his character, but he's very brief in the movie. He's really just there to get killed at the end and thrown off the balcony. He's probably another D tier character. You know, Scream 3, it didn't have the best characters, and they were really just there to get murdered. So unfortunately, Tyson's also going to drop to the D tier. I will say Jennifer was a great character. She was great side by side with Gail, kind of trying to like match the bitchiness of Gail, and someone that actually could get under Gail's skin. You know, it's really like tough for Gail to be bothered. She's very headstrong, and it's hilarious that she was acting as Gail and that she was able to put up that fight. So she was really one of the best parts of Scream 3 for me. I would be willing to put her on the B tier though, because she does end up dying. She's very one-off in that, and because of that, she has to go a little lower. I wouldn't feel right putting her in the A tier. So B tier for Jennifer. If she would have lasted longer in the franchise though, easily an A tier character. So next is John Milton. He's very just like one-off. He's more like to set up the reveal at the end of Scream 3. So his presence in the franchise is just kind of meh. I would probably throw him in the C tier solely because you don't have some of these stab movies that keep the franchise going in the Scream universe without John Milton's character. And he's part of the reason why Sidney has to deal with the reveal that Roman is the half-brother of Sidney, and reveals all his motivations as starting the Ghostface like persona and going after Sidney and trying to kill her, which sparks the entire franchise. You figure out that Roman is actually the reason that Billy like was motivated to go after Sidney and had the encouragement. So Roman is really a keystone piece in the franchise lore. He's the first solo Ghostface killer, and he's efficient as hell solo, I will say. He has the voice changer, which they don't really explain, but a really cool addition to Ghostface. It's kind of controversial because some people really don't like him, some people do like him. I think you can't deny, as a Scream franchise character, the weight that he brings with starting and encouraging Billy and Stu, clearing it out with Scream 3. If Scream 3 was the end of the franchise, he would have been the final killer. I think I gotta put Roman on the B tier. So now jumping into Scream 4, the opening scene is Jenna and Marnie getting killed. It's a pretty good opening scene, especially with the fake outs with Stab. I thought that was really clever. Ultimately, they're like one of the least impactful opening kills for me, even though I love Scream 4. It's one of my favorites. I would actually put Marnie on the D tier. I'm going to put Jenna on the F tier. She gets smashed by a garage door and just kind of like fumbles the bag completely. At least Marnie kind of has some meta commentary at the start of the movie, so she gets put on D tier. Jenna, unfortunately, on the F tier. Now, moving on to Kirby. She is one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. I was so shocked when I thought that Charlie had killed her at the end of Scream 4, but to then find out that she has survived in the Scream 6 trailers. I did enjoy her coming back in Scream 6, even though she didn't have quite as much to do, but in Scream 4, she is one of the standout characters, and the fact that she does come back does push her up. She is an A tier character for me. She has very strong final girl energy. She could probably run this franchise on her own if she wanted to. There's a little something missing from her in Scream 6 that kind of brings her back down from that S tier for me. If she comes back in the Scream franchise, she could get bumped up to S tier depending on what's going on. But this very second, I'm feeling A tier for her. Now, her friend Olivia doesn't really get that much to do other than have an awesomely brutal and gory kill in the franchise. If we wanted to weight a little higher just because the kill was so good, you could push her up to the C tier. But I think overall, she's a D tier character. Now, moving on to Rebecca Walters. While her character was very brief in Scream 4, she kind of had that like snarky publicist vibe, you know, the agent of Sidney that was trying to get multiple books written about her past and trauma. And Sidney didn't want to capitalize on that. She wasn't doing it for the money. She was genuinely trying to help people. And Sidney fires her, but she immediately gets killed after she's fired. So worst day of her life, she gets fired from this awesome job and gets murdered by Ghostface after being tortured in the car. They set her up very well to be a character where you're excited to see what Ghostface does with her. I would put her on the C tier. Now to get into the Woodsboro Police Department in Scream 4, we're going to be starting off with Deputy Haas, who does the parole over Perkins after Perkins predicts that if he did the walk, that he would be the one that dies. But then Haas does the walk, doesn't die, then goes checks on Perkins, and then dies after Perkins fakes his death to fake out Perkins. They're ridiculous. They're the reason that Olivia dies. They basically did nothing during the stakeout. They just sat there and talked about random shit. He's an F tier character for me. Deputy Perkins, I'm willing to push up to D tier because he definitely tanks a knife to the forehead in the brain just because of his sheer will to live. Definitely getting up on the D tier for me. This is also where creepy ass Judy Hicks gets introduced. She's very weird in Scream 4. I will say in Scream 5, after she becomes sheriff, she is a lot better. But her kind of like really being obsessed with Dewey, kind of causing some trouble between Dewey and Gail. Not really a fan of Judy's character, and you know, even though she does kind of save the day at the end, and she does work with Gail to take out Jill, Judy is probably a C tier character. Scream 5 kind of redeems her a lot, and she has a really awesome death scene. Sidney's Aunt Kate is Jill's mom. She kind of has this like weird jealousy competition to see who can be the most fucked up when they talk about Maureen and Sidney's scars, and she's like, well, you can't see my scars. Not all scars are visible or some shit. Can't stand characters like that try to like compare trauma as if it's equal to every person. And she has a funny death when she gets stabbed through the male part of the door. She kind of opens her eyes and like looks at Sidney. She doesn't say anything. I think that part's low-key hilarious. A little campy for the seriousness of Scream 4. So because of that, I'm going to put her on the D tier. She really doesn't do anything except be kind of a weird mopey character and serve as like a, damn, Jill kind of sucks. Next on the list is fucking Trevor. Trevor sucks. He is literally one of the worst characters in the Scream franchise. He is just there to be a suspect for the murders, but they don't give him any character depth other than being a fucking dick. Definitely an F tier character. Trevor's just a whatever character. I barely remember him. I forgot about him until having to make this tier list, and I was like, oh yeah, that bastard exists. So next up is Robbie. Robbie is definitely the protege of Randy. They even have like similar names. They love their movies. They're good at predicting the future and making shit happen. Like he's streaming all the time. Like that eventually happens in life. But he's also, you know, he's talking about surviving movies. He has one of the best kills in the entire franchise. I love when he gets murdered by Ghostface. Robbie gets put up to a B tier for me. He doesn't really put up much of a fight. But I do love that after he gets stabbed, he walks up into the porch and kind of warns Sidney and kicks off the end of the movie. You know, Robbie rolling up is kind of what makes everything go crazy. So follow up Robbie, we got Charlie, who we find out is one of the Ghostface killers. His reasoning for being a Ghostface killer is just like jumping into the spotlight with Jill, but also he wants to kill Kirby because Kirby just now started to have feelings for Charlie, even though they've been in high school for 4 years, so I guess they're going to go to college, and he didn't like that she was so late. I've never felt a roller coaster of emotions like I did when Kirby goes to close out Charlie. Charlie then survives the questioning, and then Kirby goes to untie Charlie to then stab Kirby. Like, that was probably the most shook I've been in the franchise. I had no idea that was coming. Jill does betray him because he's just a simp. He gets shot up by Jill. You know, he's just part of the plan for Jill at the end of the day. He's very much a very Mickey-esque character. He's just kind of there for the grunt work while Jill does all the masterminding. So because of that, he's getting brought down to the B tier. Very much just a pawn in the game at the end of the day. That leads to Jill, the family bloodline of Sidney, so you already know she's got some badass in her. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's willing to do whatever she's got to do to be famous. She's tired of Sidney being the one that's always being talked about in the family, so she's trying to get Sidney out of there and become this new final girl by killing everybody and surviving solo. Jill is an S tier character. Her motives are very, very high, and even though she is in one movie, and she surpasses some of the legacy characters, I think what ranks Jill so high is she almost got away with it. If it weren't for Sidney literally just being too badass to die, Jill would have gotten away with it. Because she was the only one that was this close, she ranks that high. You gotta respect her. She made it further than anybody ever has. So starting off with Scream 5 in 2022, we have the opening kill with Tara. But Tara doesn't die. She actually survives the bajillion stab wounds and broken bones that she gets from the awesome Ghostface intro. She even does badass things while she's injured in a wheelchair. She doesn't have as much to do in Scream 5 because she is injured, but she does eventually get Amber, and in Scream 6, she's a Haas. You know, she's trying to just forget her troubles. I think Tara's character is very interesting. I would put Tara at the A tier, like the tippy top of the A tier. She's on par with Dewey and Gail with me. Like, she's going to be known as like part of the franchise homies. Like, when you think of Scream, you're going to think of Tara. Now, her sister Sam, though, there's something special about her for me. I love that she is connected to Billy. Even though I could see people not being okay with that, I love it. I think it's a great way to like bring Billy into the new sequels. I love that Sam kinda enjoys defending herself against these Ghostface killers. Like, when she's able to let loose on Richie and Detective Bailey in Scream 5 and 6, Sam goes all out. She's savage. Knocked it out of the park for me in Scream 6. I would put Sam at the S tier. Now, to get into the friend group a little bit here, we got Wes Hicks, Judy's son, he's really just... He's like throwing accusations at Dewey. He's really just there to be an ass, but also has like a good suspenseful scene where you're waiting on Ghostface to kill him while Judy is like trying to rush to him after the awesome phone call. He gets a great death scene, but other than that, he's a D tier character. He's a D tier character. There's not much going on with Wes. Liv is kind of a do-nothing character throughout the movie until the very end, where you kind of have some tension between her and Chad, and then she ends up getting killed by Amber in the third act reveal. I would probably put her in the F tier. I barely remember her. She's just blah. Now, Mindy is one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. I love that she kind of puts her own spin on Randy. Like, Randy seems very nerdy, whereas Mindy seems very confident in herself, but still very knowledgeable about those things. Like, I would actually really like to hang out with Mindy, whereas Randy seemed like he could get on my nerves, especially like Scream 2, he randomly goes into the British accent. I'm like, Randy, why are you screaming in the fucking video store in Scream 1? Whereas Mindy, very chill. She's just trying to watch movies at the party. I'm putting Mindy up at the A tier. She's one of my favorite characters. I was so happy to know that she survived. And then you have Mindy's brother Chad, also related to Randy. He's less of the film guru and more of like kind of a jock-esque character. Like, he's very confident and charismatic. He kind of has that Dewey-esque like knife sponge heart of the group, but in a more like confident way. If Chad is helping me fight somebody, I actually have faith that Chad's going to help me versus Dewey, but also I know that Chad's probably going to get stabbed a bajillion times. His character isn't quite resonant with me as it is with Mindy, so I'm going to put Chad on the B tier under Mindy. I just like her character a little bit more. I do think Chad's great. I feel like Chad should have died in Scream 5 or Scream 6. So next on the list is Vince. Apparently this is Stu's nephew. He gets a really quick scene where he just gets like stabbed a whole bunch of times. He's kind of got something with Liv going on. He's an F tier character. He sucked. He's a great character to hate. He's easy to put in the F tier because they made him that way. But then we get to Richie. And Richie is a bastard because he plays on the Derek kind of thing in Scream 2, where he's like a good boyfriend. You're like, in no way it's going to be the boyfriend. They're like, it's been done. He gets shot by Sidney, and even then, he's like, holy shit, is that Ghostface? Like, he really plays it up all the way to the end, and then he fucking stabs Sam. So the highest I can put Richie is a C tier. His motivation of just like toxic fandom and being bored of the movies that are out, so let's inspire a new movie, was kind of weak for me. But where I will give a lot of props is Amber, Richie's partner. Not only does she get some of the best kills in the franchise, she kills Dewey. Now, you guys know, I was hurt by Dewey dying, but she almost kills Gail. She almost got two legacy characters in the same movie. She fucks up Chad, I'm pretty sure. Like, her and Roman are pretty equal in like the ferocity that they had. She's an A tier. Might be a little controversial, but because she gets such a brutal death, she's on fire, she gets shot, she gets stabbed, like the way that she fights Sidney and Gail, she kills Dewey. You can't knock how impactful her Ghostface is. So now we're jumping into Scream 6. Opening kill with Laura, the film professor. Was not expecting the twist that happens with her character at the beginning of the movie. Probably on the D tier, unfortunately. Great cameo, but it's a D tier character in the franchise overall. I will say though, Jason Carvey is probably on the D tier, unfortunately. He's trying to finish Richie's movie after obviously being murdered, and it was great to see the fake out of Greg actually dies and that play into everything. But other than that, he's a D tier character. We got to see him for like maybe 15 minutes. Danny, Sam's boyfriend in Scream 6, is very easily a B tier character. I loved how positive he was and how he was so willing to help Sam. He could have been very offended to think, oh, you think I'm the murderer? But instead he was understanding and was like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, you shouldn't trust anybody, so I'm gonna go. He helps with the ladder scene. Like, they would have not have survived if it wasn't for Danny. He's an MVP character, and I hope he sticks around in Scream 7, because I think Sam and Danny could have really like tight connection now. He's going B tier for now. In future movies, he could be pushed up to an A tier character, but for now, B tier. Dr. Stone is the therapist for Sam in Scream 6. He pushes her to open up about her feelings and all this stuff. And then when she does open up about how she kind of enjoys murdering the Ghostface killers when that does happen, he gets all weirded out and wants to like end the meeting and shit after he tells her to open up. So he's a scrub. I low-key thought he was going to be one of the Ghostface killers, but because he just fucking bitches out on Sam in her time of need, I'm putting him on the F tier. Dr. Stone is lame as hell. Next on the list is Mindy's girlfriend, Annika. She was actually really cool in the little amount of time we had with her in Scream 6. You know, she's kind of part of the group discussions before everybody starts getting murdered. But she has an awesome death sequence with the tension of the ladder in between the two apartment buildings. I wish we got a little more from her. But the fact that she wasn't a Ghostface killer and she does get a pretty good death sequence and it's pretty fresh in my mind, I'm going to probably throw her on the C tier. So now we're getting to the reveals of Scream 6, starting with Quinn. I think Quinn is a D tier character. She's just kind of there as like the sex positive roommate, but because they fake her death scene, just like they do Roman in Scream 3, you know, I counted her out. There's no way she's Ghostface, especially because the New York Police Department fucking said that she was dead, so why in the world would I say anything otherwise? But no, she's alive. She started the rumors about Sam online. She enjoys, it seems, ruining Sam's life. As a character, she wasn't that great, so I think D tier. You know, she wasn't the worst, she wasn't the best. So Richie's other brother, Ethan, is also part of this with Quinn, and he's part of the friend group. He's actually Chad's roommate. He's kind of this annoying guy in the friend group. He's like the virgin and they kind of make fun of him. And then it turns out he's actually one of the killers and he turns into this very crazy killer. He does have a good little death sequence and his sequences with Sam and Tara were pretty good. But he's probably on the D tier with Quinn. But I think he was Ghostface in a few of the awesome scenes in Scream 6. So I do give him props for that. Probably a little more than Quinn. Now Detective Bailey, who is the father of Richie, is the one that's kind of planned all this out. I am going to put him on the C tier solely because his motivation is very strong in that he has planned this out in a year. He's got his 2 other children involved. You know, I'm surprised they went along with it so easily. He's tricked the New York Police Department. He tricked the FBI. Because Kirby's there working, you know, she's part of the FBI. So Detective Bailey has all this shit figured out to a T. He presents this awesome shrine. You got to give Detective Bailey a little bit of props. His children are a little bit annoying. But as a Ghostface killer, and I'm pretty sure he's the convenience store killer, he is definitely at least on the C tier. And that covers it for all the Scream characters in the Scream franchise. This is my personal ranking, so let me know if you guys agree or disagree, if you would put people higher or lower on the list. You know, I'm sure I have some controversial takes here, but, you know, I think that's the great thing about Scream is it has a lot of different opinions. So let me know in the comments. I enjoy talking with you guys about this movie stuff. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen those Scream reactions, I just watched the entire Scream franchise this past month, so make sure you check out those reactions. And for you guys that are hanging out on the channel, Final Destination 2 coming out real soon. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.